They say some women are born strong, but the truth is, strength is usually carved out of places that once hurt. And if you had seen Ariana Cole the night she signed her first multi-million-dollar deal, standing alone in her glass-walled office above the glowing skyline of Atlanta, you would think she was untouchable, unbreakable, inevitable. But that version of her was not born. She was built, brick by brick, wound by wound, dream by dream that she refused to bury, no matter who tried to silence her. Before we go deeper, if stories of resilience, power, and rebirth speak to something inside you, stay with this one. Like, comment, and follow, because what comes next isn't just a story. It's a reminder of what a woman can become when the world underestimates her. Ariana Cole's day began before the sun, always had. In the pale blue quiet of early morning, long before the city remembered it was alive, she laced her running shoes, pushed open the door of her midtown high-rise, and ran. Past streetlights flickering, past newspaper carts still shuttered, past the parts of the city that slept because they could. She ran to remember who she was before the titles, before the money, before the admiration that never felt like love. Detroit, age 9. That's where the story truly began. A small apartment with peeling paint, a mother who worked double shifts at the hospital, a kitchen table missing one chair because Ariana's father took it when he left, and her mother never replaced it. "We don't fill empty spaces with what's easy," her mother used to say. "We fill them with what's earned." Ariana carried those words the way others carried prayers. In high school, she was the girl who finished homework in the hallway while waiting for her mom's shift to end. The girl who said no to parties and yes to scholarships. The girl who understood early that no one was coming to save her, and that was not tragedy, but clarity. Howard University sharpened her mind. Wall Street hardened it, and the day she walked away from an investment firm run by men who praised her brilliance but never promoted her, she wasn't angry, she was already planning. Sphere was born in a 400-square-foot studio with a desk that shook when she typed too hard. A fintech platform designed to help small businesses like the barbershop her uncle lost when loans dried up, survive where banks refused to help. For 2 years, no one believed in her. For 2 years, every pitch ended in patronizing smiles. Impressive concept. We'll revisit once you have traction. Ambitious, but maybe focus on something more practical. But Ariana didn't build her life on belief. She built it on refusal. Refusal to stay small. Refusal to say thank you for crumbs. Her breakthrough came when a neighborhood cafe owner used her platform to avoid shutting down during a recession. Then another. Then a dozen more. Then a local news segment, then venture capital calls she didn't return for 3 days, not because she was busy, but because she wanted them to wait. Power is knowing you can say no. Now at 33, Ariana stood in the largest office space she'd ever walked into, because it was hers. Cole Sphere. Valuation $120 million and rising. CEO. Innovator. The name people quoted when they wanted to sound informed. But success has a sound, and sometimes it's quiet. That evening, after the last employee left, Ariana sat in the stillness of her office, her heels off, her hair pinned back, her heart steady, but her eyes held the kind of tired that had nothing to do with work, because everything she had built came at a cost. The cost of softness, the cost of letting someone else hold the vulnerable parts. The cost of admitting she was lonely in a room full of admiration. Outside, the city sparkled like something worth loving. Inside, Ariana wondered if she had built a fortress or a cage. What she did not know, not yet, was that someone was already on their way into her life. Someone who would make her believe, for a moment, that the fortress could open. That softness didn't have to mean loss. That love didn't have to be a battlefield. But the thing about opening doors is this. You never know what storms will walk through them. And Ariana Cole, the woman who built herself, was about to learn that even the strongest foundations can crack. Not from pressure, but from trust. It happened on an evening washed in gold. Ariana stood beneath the soaring glass atrium of the Atlanta Cultural Foundation Gala, one of those events where champagne flowed like water, and everyone pretended their generosity was altruism rather than branding. She attended because Cole Sphere sponsored grants for minority students entering finance and technology. For her, this wasn't image, it was memory. It was her mother's tired hands. It was the kitchen table missing a chair. She wore a black silk gown, simple, structured, intentional. Not to impress, but to remind herself she had not come from silk. She had earned it. That's when she heard laughter. Warm, unforced, real. Liam Hart stood across the room, surrounded by donors, politicians, and socialites, all orbiting him, as though drawn into his gravity. He didn't shine with arrogance. He didn't dominate the space. He simply existed comfortably in it, like someone who had never once questioned whether he belonged. Tall, light hair, a relaxed confidence in the way he held his glass. No watch, no designer label screaming for attention. A man who seemed at ease in his own skin. When his eyes met hers, the room didn't go silent, but her thoughts did. Not because he was stunning, but because he looked at her as though he saw her. Not the CEO, not the headline, not the strong woman others romanticized or resented. Just her. He crossed the room, weaving through small talk and chatter, as though the path were inevitable. "You're Ariana Cole." His voice was calm, not impressed, not intimidated, just aware. "And you are?" she asked, matching his poise. Liam Hart, urban planning consultant," he explained, "helping cities rebuild neglected neighborhoods. Community-focused, purpose-driven." Or at least that was the story he told. They spoke, not about money, not about power, but about Detroit, about growing up watching people work too hard for too little, about cities that forgot their own children. He didn't flinch when she used words like equity, generational infrastructure, socio-economic healing. Most men grew restless when women spoke with too much conviction. Liam leaned in. When she laughed at something he said, something small, something human, he looked almost startled, like her laughter was a gift he had not expected to receive. The evening unfolded like that, not fireworks, not grand gestures, something quieter, the kind of warmth that sneaks into your chest and builds a home there. At the end of the night, as guests filtered out, Liam walked her toward the exit. The valet lights cast their faces in amber. A soft, windless night. "May I call you?" he asked. Ariana paused. She was a woman who did not allow disruption. She did not let people in simply because they asked. But something inside her, a part she thought she'd buried beneath ambition and survival, answered for her. Yes. The single word felt like opening a door that had stayed locked for too many winters. Their first dates were quiet dinners, neighborhood bookstores, walks along the Beltline at dusk. Liam listened, not to respond, not to impress, but to understand. He asked about her mother. He asked about Detroit. He asked what fear felt like when she was building Cole's Sphere, and everything could have collapsed at any moment. No one had ever asked her that before. Most people only wanted the victory, never the war. And for the first time in a long time, Ariana did not feel like a fortress. She felt like a woman who could lean, not just lead. He made her laugh, really laugh. The kind of laughter that shakes the dust out of the corners of your ribs. She began to imagine, just barely, what it might be like to share her life instead of hold it alone. She did not know yet that Liam also had shadows, that the confidence she saw was stitched carefully over old insecurities, that he admired her strength but feared it too. She did not know that while she saw him as a partner, he saw her as a mirror, one that reflected back everything he had not yet become. Love, at first, was sunlight, but sometimes sunlight blinds just as easily as it warms. And in the glow of that early brightness, Ariana stepped forward, unaware of the storm forming quietly behind his smile. Love did not arrive with fanfare or declarations. It seeped in quietly, like early morning light slipping under a closed door, illuminating what was once dim. For Ariana, vulnerability was not a language she spoke fluently. She had spent her entire life translating hunger into discipline, longing into work, fear into forward motion. She built empires instead of relationships, accomplishments instead of attachments. Because attachments had always come with loss. But Liam, he didn't knock down her walls. He sat outside them, patient, warm, inviting. And slowly, the gates opened on their own. It began with shared routines. Saturday coffee runs to the Black-owned cafe 2 blocks away. Late-night conversations on her balcony. The Atlanta skyline flickering like constellations built of ambition and electricity. Dinners where she cooked and he washed dishes with music humming low in the background. Jazz. Always jazz. There was a gentleness to him, a way of looking at her like he saw the parts of her no one else believed existed. The softness beneath the steel. One evening, as summer leaned into fall, she invited him into her private workspace at home, a room no one entered. Walls lined with whiteboards covered in formulas, market projections, sketches of future systems, and quotes written in her mother's looping script. It was her sanctuary, her blueprint of survival. Liam stood in the doorway, his voice quiet. This is your mind on walls. Ariana felt her chest tighten, not in fear, but recognition. He understood her. No one had ever been allowed to see this part of her. Not investors, not employees, not even friends. Yet here he was, inside the last locked room. He stepped closer, not touching anything, but absorbing every detail like it was sacred. "It's beautiful," he said. Not impressive, not genius, not powerful. Beautiful. Something in her broke open. Weeks turned into months. Liam struggled with a late payment from a client. Ariana didn't hesitate. She transferred funds without being asked. "Partnership means support," she said. It was not grand. It was simple, natural, the way love should feel. He moved into her high-rise soon after, not because she needed him there. She had lived alone for years without loneliness chasing her shadows, but because his presence made the world feel less sharp, less cold. Her apartment changed, rowing trophies on a shelf beside framed patents, his jackets hanging beside her blazers, 2 toothbrushes by the sink. Small things. Insignificant, except that they meant something. A shared life, a shared future, a shared breath. One evening, while rain tapped gently against the windows, Ariana slept with her head resting on Liam's chest. Her breath steadied. Her hand curled loosely against him. Liam watched her. His fingers traced the curve of her shoulder, not in desire, but in wonder. To the world, she was unshakable, immovable, titan-forged and iron-willed. But here she was simply a woman who had learned to stop guarding herself long enough to fall asleep in someone else's arms. He whispered into the dimness, "I've never known someone like you." And he meant it. But beneath the warmth in his voice, there was something else. A flicker, a quiet awareness that loving her was like standing near the sun, warming, life-giving, but bright enough that a man could lose his sense of scale, could realize his own light was much smaller. Ariana did not notice. Not yet. She was too busy memorizing what it felt like to trust. Months later, they attended a neighborhood block event. Families, music, the smell of grilled corn and peach cobbler in the air. A little girl recognized Ariana from a local news segment and ran up to her, face bright. "You're the lady who kept my daddy's store open. He said you saved us." Ariana knelt to eye level with the child, smiling softly. "I didn't save anything. Your dad did the work. I just gave him a chance to keep going." But the girl threw her arms around Ariana's neck and held on tightly. And Liam, standing a few paces away, watched the way admiration fell over Ariana like sunlight. How people didn't just respect her, they needed her, looked up to her, were inspired by her. He felt pride for her, but also something sharp, something small, something bruising. A quiet whisper inside him. "Where is your legacy, Liam? Where are your victories?" It was the first time he felt it, the shadow of comparison, the beginning of a crack. But Ariana, with her head thrown back in laughter as the little girl showed her how to double Dutch jump rope. She saw none of it. She only saw love, steady, growing, safe. She believed she had finally found someone who did not fear her light. But light reveals, and soon it would reveal him too. Not the man he tried to be in her presence, but the man he had always been when no one was watching. The first time Ariana saw her, it was not in a dramatic confrontation, nor in some whispered rumor carried between social circles. It was simpler than that, almost innocent. A charity luncheon, the kind designed to look humble while costing more than some people's monthly income. Crystal glasses, soft piano music, and conversations polished to perfection. Ariana attended as a keynote sponsor, Liam as her partner. They walked in together, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He looked proud. She felt steady. But steadiness is often the moment just before the shift. Celeste Monroe was standing by the gallery windows, sunlight pouring in behind her like a staged photograph, effortless beauty, blonde hair gathered in a lazy twist, expensive but understated dress, posture relaxed in a way that suggested she had never once needed to earn approval. Where Ariana's presence commanded a room, intentional, precise, Celeste drifted through one, soft, airy, untouched by urgency. They moved in the same city but came from different worlds entirely. Ariana had built everything she had. Celeste had inherited everything she needed. And some comparisons are not spoken. They are simply felt. Liam, I haven't seen you in ages. Celeste's voice was warm honey, sweet, slow, disarming. He turned, surprised, and smiled in a way Ariana had never seen before. Soft, unshielded, familiar. Oh, wow, Celeste, he said, stepping forward to hug her lightly. It's been a long time. A long time. Ariana heard every syllable. Celeste's eyes shifted to her, interested but not intimidated. You must be Ariana. I've heard extraordinary things. Her tone was polite, but there was something beneath it, not cruelty. No, something gentler, more dangerous. Curiosity, amusement, assessment, as if she was looking not at a woman, but at the idea of one. Ariana extended her hand. Nice to meet you. Celeste didn't shake it. She covered it, in that socialite way that pretends warmth while establishing hierarchy. Touch without connection. Liam didn't notice, but Ariana's skin remembered. The conversation was surface level, but every line had weight. Celeste asked Liam about his consulting firm, leaning in just slightly too close. She laughed at his jokes a bit too softly. She held eye contact just a second too long. Not flirting, something subtle, recognition of vulnerability. Celeste was the kind of woman men felt safe beside, not challenged, not measured, not confronted by their own unfinished selves. Ariana saw it. She didn't know the whole truth yet, but she felt the shift in the air. Liam stood straighter when Celeste looked at him. His voice changed, lighter, looser, as though something inside him exhaled in her presence. Meanwhile, beside Ariana, he did not exhale. He rose. He reached. He strained, not because she demanded it, but because he believed he had to. And the human heart, when given the choice between elevation and rest, often chooses rest. When they returned home that night, Ariana asked only one question. How do you know her? Liam shrugged. We used to run in the same circles. Her family funded some of the city planning projects I worked on. We were close, I guess, but not like that. He said it casually, too casually. Ariana nodded, not suspicious, just aware. Because the truth is, a woman who has had to survive does not fear other women. She does not envy them. She does not crumble under comparison, but she notices. She observes the shift of tone, the reallocation of attention, the subtle recalibration of affection. She sees the moment love begins to balance unevenly. And something inside her, something deep and old, whispered, careful, not with him, with herself, because Ariana had opened doors inside her heart that had been locked for years. She had allowed peace to sit beside her. She had built a future in her mind that included someone other than her reflection. And now there was a crack. Not wide enough to break anything, just enough to remind her that love is not protection. Love is exposure, and exposure is how the light gets in. But it's also how the cold gets in. Ariana did not yet know the extent of what Celeste represented. She did not yet know that Liam would soon return to that warmth, that ease, that softness, not because it was better, but because it demanded nothing of him. Ariana did not know she had already given him everything, including the key. And keys, once given, are not easily returned. It began with a suitcase. Ariana noticed it while passing through the bedroom one quiet Thursday morning. A sleek black travel case resting beside the dresser, half-zipped, shirts folded with a kind of haste that didn't match Liam's usual unhurried ways. The sun had barely risen, the city outside still wrapped in early light, and yet he was packing. He didn't look up when she entered. Charlotte, he said, as though answering a question she hadn't asked. The city planning board wants to review one of my proposals in person. I'll only be gone 3 days. His voice was even, professional, prepared. But Ariana had built her life studying tone. Investors, partners, competitors. She could hear when somebody was telling the truth. and when they were hoping you wouldn't look too closely. She didn't question him, not then. Trust, she believed, was not a performance. Love didn't require interrogation, so she kissed him goodbye, soft, unworried. But trust does not silence instinct. That night, she worked late, Coalsphere preparing for a new funding round. The office was quiet, lights dim except for the glow of her monitors. Everything should have felt normal, but her phone remained still. No goodnight text, no check-in, no simple, ordinary presence. Ariana wasn't a woman prone to insecurity, but absence has a weight, and silence has a sound. She tried to sleep. She couldn't. By morning, she checked his location. Not out of suspicion, but habit. Liam always shared it. A mutual precaution, they called it. A small intimacy. His location pinged. Not Charlotte. Not anywhere near it. New Orleans. Ariana's breath caught. Not with anger, not yet, but understanding. New Orleans, the same city where Celeste's family hosted their annual autumn retreat. Slowly, deliberately, Ariana set her phone down on the kitchen counter. The coffee pot hummed. The refrigerator clicked. Outside, a siren wailed down Peachtree Street. The world continued. Her world stopped. When Liam called, hours later, his voice was bright. Too bright. Hey, sorry, it's been crazy here. Meetings back to back. How are things there? Ariana listened. To the words. To the pauses. To the way his voice thinned around the edges. Stretched too tightly around a lie. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Because the moment you name betrayal, it becomes real. And sometimes the heart needs a few final seconds of denial before the fall. So she said only, I hope your meetings go well. And she hung up gently, as though the softness in her voice could stop the ground from shifting beneath her feet. 2 days later, she saw the photo. It appeared casually, as most tragedies do, sandwiched between business updates and congratulations messages on her feed. A group of philanthropists gathered on the terrace of a French Quarter estate. Smiles, champagne, golden dusk behind them, and in the background, barely noticeable unless you were looking for him, Liam, standing beside Celeste, not touching, not posed, not obvious, but his posture told the truth his words had denied. Relaxed, weight lifted, unburdened. Ariana didn't cry. She didn't shatter. She didn't collapse under the weight of understanding. She simply froze. Because sometimes heartbreak is not a strike. It is a slow realization, a gentle unwinding of belief, a quiet internal whisper, I thought you were safe. When Liam returned, he smelled of citrus soap and hotel air conditioning. He hugged her with arms that felt familiar but not present. She didn't pull away. She didn't accuse. She didn't break. She asked one question. How is Charlotte? He hesitated one breath too long, and that was the moment, the exact, sharp, irrevocable moment when Ariana understood that the love she had allowed herself to trust now stood on ground that was already cracking. It was good, he said. It was the smallest sentence, but it carried the weight of every lie ever told to a woman who had finally softened enough to be hurt. That night, Ariana lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Liam asleep beside her. She thought of her mother, the missing chair at the kitchen table, the lesson. We do not fill empty spaces with what is easy. We fill them with what is earned. She had given Liam her vulnerability, her trust, her future, and he had filled it with ease. Not because he did not love her, but because he did not love himself enough to stay. Ariana did not speak, not yet, because the storm had not arrived. This was only the wind, the first quiet warning, the air changing, the world tilting, the lie landing softly. Before the unraveling began, the collapse did not arrive at night, in secrecy, as heartbreaks often do. It arrived in daylight, in public, under fluorescent office lighting, while Ariana stood in front of people who believed she was unbreakable. Coalsphere's executive boardroom was made of glass, transparent, bright, and merciless. Ariana stood at the head of the long table, presenting the launch strategy for their newest financial platform. Her voice was steady, her posture perfect, her mind razor-sharp, but her heart was a cord pulled too tight. The months since New Orleans had been a performance. Liam had returned home. He had smiled and laughed and loved her, or something like love. And Ariana had tried to believe him, tried to let silence mean healing, tried to convince herself that intuition was simply insecurity wearing certainty. But truth does not stay quiet. It waits, and then it arrives. Her phone buzzed on the polished conference table. Liam, calling. He never called during work hours. Never. He understood her world. He respected it, which meant something was already wrong. "Excuse me," Ariana said, composed, stepping toward the hallway. Light footsteps, controlled breathing. The mask held. She answered softly, "Hey, is everything all right?" On the other end, noise, music, laughter, clinking glasses. Not an office, not a conference room, not Charlotte. "Ariana," Liam said, breath uneven, not distressed but conflicted. There was a pause, a hesitation, the kind that precedes words that break things. "We need to talk." Her grip on the phone tightened, not out of fear, out of knowing. "What about?" Her voice did not shake. "Our relationship." Ariana closed her eyes. The glass walls of the corridor reflected her back at herself. Perfect, powerful, whole. A woman who did not fall apart. A woman who could not fall apart. But inside her chest, something small curled inward. She asked only one question. "Where are you right now?" Another pause. Too long. The Monroe Foundation event in New Orleans. There it was, the truth, unvarnished, undeniable. "You told me you were in Charlotte," she said. Ariana, just listen, please." His voice had changed, defensive, restless, half-trapped. I can't do this anymore. Not like this, not with you. I feel." His breath caught, and then suffocated. The word landed like a blade. Suffocated by the woman who loved him, by the life she had built, by the very strength he once admired. "You make everything a challenge," he continued. "Everything is intense, focused, serious. With someone like her, it's just easy. I can just exist." There was no need to finish the name. Ariana did not cry. She did not gasp. She did not beg. She simply stood there in silence, while her entire future rearranged itself around her. "You're leaving me," she said, not a question. "I think it's best, for both of us." And then, almost gently, "I hope you understand." Understand. The irony was devastating. Ariana understood perfectly. He wanted peace he didn't have to earn, love that didn't ask him to grow, a life where his reflection did not reveal his unfinished self. He wanted ease, and she had never been easy. When she returned to the boardroom, 30 faces looked up at her, expectant, unaware that the ground beneath her had just fallen away. "Where were we?" she asked. Her voice was steady. Her hands did not shake. Her lungs did not tremble. She finished the presentation, flawlessly, because that is what women like Ariana do. We bleed later. We break in private. We collapse in rooms no one will ever see. That evening, she returned to the high-rise apartment, the home that had felt warm when Liam was in it, and heavy now that he was not. His closet was already half empty. He had not waited. He had not discussed. He had decided. There was no note, just absence. And absence is its own violence. Ariana stood at the window overlooking the glittering sprawl of Atlanta. The city pulsed with life below her, unaware of the quiet devastation happening 17 floors above it. Her palms braced against the glass. Her reflection stared back. Not the CEO, not the prodigy, not the woman who built herself from scraped knees and late nights. Just Ariana, just a woman who had believed love could be something other than loss. Her breath trembled once. Only once, then stillness, then silence. The shattering had happened, but it made no sound. Heartbreak is not always a collapse. Sometimes it is a slow descent, not dramatic, not loud, just steady, a sinking. Ariana woke the next morning in a bed that felt unfamiliar, though it had been hers long before Liam ever entered her life. The sheets were the same, the pillows the same. The morning sun spilled across the same floor, but something was missing. Not him. Herself. She moved through the penthouse like a ghost, turned on the shower but didn't step inside, boiled water for coffee but didn't drink it, opened her laptop but stared at the blank screen for minutes that bled into hours. The world outside surged onward. Emails, meetings, markets, demands, always demands. But Ariana had slipped underwater, and everything sounded muffled now. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Dana, COO, friend, anchor. "I'm coming over." Board chat. Final numbers for Q3? Press contact. Requesting quote for feature spread. Her mother. Just checking in, baby. Call me when you can. Ariana answered none of them. Because how do you translate heartbreak into words? How do you say, the person I trusted with my softness decided it was too heavy to carry, and now I don't know how to pick myself back up. Days passed. Then a week. Maybe more. Time loses form when pain becomes atmosphere. Ariana sat on the couch, still wearing the same black t-shirt and sweatpants she'd pulled on the night Liam left. The city lights flickered across her face each evening, but she didn't look at them. She stared at nothing, or perhaps everything. She found herself scrolling through Celeste's social media, not out of envy, but out of study. Celeste laughing on a sailboat, Celeste sipping wine in a garden, Celeste leaning into Liam's shoulder, though his face was cropped out. No struggle, no striving, no ambition sharpened into armor, just ease. That was what he chose. Not beauty, not love, ease. And that was what broke her. Because Ariana had fought her whole life to build a world where she could finally rest. And when she found someone to rest with, he left her for someone who required no effort. She whispered into the empty room. Was I too much? The silence answered back. No, he was not enough. But silence cannot comfort. Silence only echoes. Her work began to unravel. She postponed 2 investor meetings, then canceled 3 more. Her leadership team grew nervous, but careful. No one wanted to approach a queen wounded. Dana tried. She let herself into the apartment one afternoon, using the emergency access code Ariana had given her years ago. She found Ariana sitting on the floor of the living room, legs drawn to her chest, staring at the door as if expecting someone to walk through it and undo everything. Dana did not speak right away. She lowered herself to the floor beside her. Her presence, quiet but solid. Finally, Ari, look at me. Ariana did not. So Dana reached out, hands gentle but unyielding, and turned her face toward hers. And there it was, the devastation, the disbelief, the exhaustion of being strong for too long. Don't fall apart alone, Dana whispered. You don't have to hold it by yourself. Ariana closed her eyes, her voice barely audible. I thought this time was different. Dana's breath trembled because she knew. She had watched Ariana love carefully, bravely, with a heart that had learned how to endure. He didn't leave because you were too much, Dana said. He left because standing next to you reminded him that he had stopped growing. The words should have comforted, but truth rarely comforts. It simply clarifies. Ariana began to cry, not violently, but quietly, as though she was afraid the world might hear her break. Dana held her, not as a COO, not as a friend trying to fix anything, just as someone who refused to let her face the darkness alone. In the weeks that followed, Ariana did not rise. Not yet, but she began to look at the wounds. She stopped pretending they didn't exist. And that is the first step of resurrection. Not standing, not moving, not rebuilding, just acknowledging the ashes. Ariana had built her life on strength, but now she would learn the strength it takes to be soft with oneself, to fall, to sit in the ruin, to let the silence speak, and to wait for the part of her that refused to die to begin to breathe again. Grief can be quiet. It can look like stillness, like someone sitting in the same spot on the same couch for days, breathing but not living, awake but not present. Ariana hadn't collapsed. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't broken anything. Her sorrow was disciplined, contained, silent, deliberate, the same way she had survived everything else in her life. But there is a danger in being strong for too long. Sometimes no one realizes you're drowning, except for Dana. Dana Reed had known Ariana since the early days, back when Cole's sphere was a laptop on a dining room table and a dream too heavy for most people to carry. Dana had stood beside her through failure, exhaustion, and the small victories that felt like miracles. She was the one Ariana trusted to read her without words. So when Ariana stopped answering messages, when she stopped showing up to the office, when work reports began stacking unanswered, Dana knew something was breaking in real time, not the business. Ariana. She arrived at the penthouse on a gray morning, clouds hanging low over Atlanta. She let herself in with the emergency code. The moment the door opened, she felt it. The air was heavy, still, like a room holding its breath. Ariana was on the couch again, knees drawn up, a blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't there. Dana didn't speak at first. She sank to the floor beside her, mirroring her position, legs crossed, hands resting calmly. Silence stretched between them, soft, not uncomfortable. Then Dana exhaled. "Ari," she said quietly, "I need you to come back now." Ariana blinked, as though coming up from underwater. "I can't," she whispered, the first words she'd spoken aloud in hours, maybe days. "Why?" Dana asked, voice steady, not demanding, inviting. Ariana's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. "Because everything I built so I'd never feel this, so I'd never be left again, so I'd never be disposable." The word cracked in the air. Dana inhaled sharply, not because the pain surprised her, but because she recognized it. She reached out and cupped Ariana's face in both hands, gentle but firm, grounding her back into her own body. "Look at me," Dana said. Her voice did not waver. "You are not broken. You are grieving. Those are not the same thing." Ariana's breath trembled. Dana continued, "You survived your childhood. You survived a world that told you your ambition made you dangerous. You built an empire from nothing but hunger and work. Do you think a man walking away is enough to unmake you?" Silence. Ariana's eyes finally spilled over. "But I loved him," she breathed. "As myself. Not as who I had to be, just me." Dana nodded, eyes softening. "Exactly. And that is why you are hurting. Because you let yourself be seen. And he didn't know what to do with that kind of truth." Ariana pressed a hand to her chest, as though her ribs were too tight to hold the feeling. "I don't know how to start again." Dana didn't hesitate. "You start small." She stood, walked to the kitchen, and turned on the kettle. The sound of boiling water was shockingly normal. Then she returned, placing a warm mug into Ariana's hands, curling Ariana's fingers around it when they didn't close on their own. "You drink this," she said, "and when you're ready, we call Dr. Malachi Dean." Ariana's head lifted. She knew the name, the therapist she'd stopped seeing once work became easier than healing. Dana didn't force, didn't lecture. She simply said, "You don't have to stay in this room, but you do have to walk out of it. One step. I'll take the rest with you until you can walk alone." And that was the moment something shifted. Not healed, not rebuilt, just shifted. Ariana's fingers tightened around the mug. Warmth seeped into her palms. And for the first time since Liam left, since the shattering, she inhaled deeply enough to feel her lungs expand. It still hurt. But hurt is not the same as absence. Hurt means something is still alive. Dana stayed the entire day. Not to talk, not to cheer up, not to fix, just to be. She folded the blankets, opened a window, started a playlist of soft jazz, held space for Ariana to exist without performing strength. And as the first evening light filtered into the room, Ariana whispered, "Okay, call him. I'm ready to start, not to forget, not to be okay, just to start." And sometimes that is everything. Healing does not begin as triumph. It begins as discipline. Harder than ambition, harder than building a company from nothing, harder than every room Ariana had ever fought her way into. Because this time, the war was not against the world. It was against herself. The first appointment with Dr. Malachi Dean took place on a Wednesday morning, in an office lined with floor-to-ceiling books and soft amber lamps. Nothing sterile, nothing cold. The space felt like a held breath. Ariana sat across from him, her posture straight, her face composed, the armor she had worn her entire life. Dr. Dean didn't ask why she was there. He simply said, "Where does it hurt the most?" Ariana's throat tightened, not in her chest, not in her heart, in her memory. She realized then, this heartbreak was not just the loss of Liam. It was the reopening of every abandoned promise, every door that had once closed in her face, every time she had learned to be strong because she had no choice. "He left," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were fragile. "And I collapsed. I don't know who I am without the strength." Dr. Dean nodded slowly. "You were strong to survive, but you were never taught how to be held." Silence. Ariana exhaled, long, heavy, almost painful. That was the beginning. The healing came in layers. Morning runs returned, not to outrun pain, but to move with it. Her feet hitting pavement were no longer an escape. They were an arrival. She ate breakfast again, Not because she was hungry, but because living required nourishment. She showered. She opened the curtains. She began answering emails. A few at a time, not all at once. Small things, ordinary things. But ordinary had always been a luxury in her life. She cried sometimes, unexpectedly, quietly, without shame. In the shower, on the balcony at dusk, hearing a song she once played while Liam cooked dinner. Grief moved through her body like a tide, and she stopped fighting the waves. At Coalsphere, the office had felt her absence like a gravity shift. Rumors, whispers, sympathy disguised as curiosity, concern disguised as strategy analysis. But when Ariana walked back in, weeks later, she did not walk in with the sharpness of command. She walked in with clarity, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, simple suit, presence steady, not forceful. Her team looked up, some startled, some relieved. Dana watched her carefully. Ariana nodded once to her, the kind of nod that says, "I'm here, not fully, but enough." That day, she didn't lead strategy. She listened, asked questions, relearned the pulse of the company she had built. She did not need to assert power. When you have built something from your bones, you do not need to prove your ownership of it. It recognizes you. The gym became her forge. Her trainer, Victor, had always admired her discipline. But now, something had changed. She wasn't training to sculpt strength. She was training to feel present in her body again, to reclaim the space inside her own skin. Weightlifting, boxing drills, yoga to relearn breath. Sweat became prayer. Movement became language. Pain became transformation. There is a kind of power that comes from demanding nothing from yourself except that you keep going. Ariana found that power, and she began to return to herself. Not the version the world applauded, not the version Liam had loved, not even the version her childhood had shaped. A new one, a woman who could be strong and soft, brilliant and slow, driven and gentle with her own heart. A woman who could rest without fear that rest would cost her everything. One evening, after a session with Dr. Dean, Ariana stood before her apartment window. Atlanta glowed below, alive, vast, full of stories unfolding in every direction. She placed a hand on the glass, not as a barrier, as a mirror. Her reflection looked back. Eyes steady, shoulders relaxed, breath even. She whispered, not to Liam, not to the past, but to herself. I am not undone. I am becoming. And it was true. She was not rebuilding. She was reforging. Fire had taken her. But fire does not only destroy. It also purifies. It shapes. It strengthens. It reveals the core of what cannot be broken. Ariana Cole had walked into the flames of her own undoing, and she was walking out made of steel. Liam believed he had chosen peace. He told himself that leaving Ariana was liberation, a return to something simpler, lighter, less demanding. With Celeste, there were no expectations, no silent pressure to grow, no mirror reflecting back the man he had not yet become. She laughed easily. She never asked about invoices, deadlines, aspirations. Her world was soft edges and slow mornings and quiet indulgence. It felt like exhaling, for a while. At first, he convinced himself he was happy. New Orleans was warm and sweet in the fall, the air thick with jazz and humidity. Celeste's world was all garden brunches and gallery openings and late-night parties where no one talked about purpose, only pleasure. Relax, she would say, leaning back in lavender silk, her voice a lazy whisper. Why are you always thinking so hard? Liam laughed then and told himself it was affection. But a whisper began forming in the back of his mind, small, insistent, unwelcome. Because thinking hard is the only thing that ever made me proud of myself. He pushed the thought away. He had chosen ease. He wanted ease. Didn't he? The first fracture was subtle. He received a proposal request from a city council member in Atlanta, work he had been waiting months for, a chance to scale his consulting firm, a turning point. He mentioned it to Celeste over dinner. She twirled her wine glass, barely looking up. Oh, babe, that sounds exhausting. You just left all of that. Why go back? Stay here. There are easier ways to make money. My father always says stress is a choice. Liam's jaw tightened. It was not judgment. It was indifference. Celeste did not understand the hunger of a man who had once needed to earn his life. She did not understand fight. She did not understand becoming. She had never had to. Days passed, then weeks. Liam tried to relax. He tried to sink into the calm. But calm without purpose becomes stagnation, and stagnation breeds self-recognition. He started waking before Celeste, sitting on the balcony of her French Quarter condo, staring at the sunrise as though it might explain something. He thought of Ariana, the way she woke at dawn to run because discipline was her love language to herself. The way she looked at problems, any problem, and saw not limitation but structure. The way she made him believe that growth was not just possible, but necessary. He remembered the night she let him into her workroom, the sanctuary of whiteboards and dreams, and how it felt like being trusted with the core of someone's soul. Celeste never asked what lived inside his mind. She only cared about how he made her feel. There is love in being cherished, but there is also love in being challenged. And he had walked away from the one that demanded courage. The breaking point came at a charity gala, one where Celeste moved through the room like it already belonged to her. An older donor asked Liam what projects he was leading now. Liam opened his mouth and realized he had no answer that felt like truth. "I'm taking some time off," he said. The donor's polite smile said everything. "You were promising. What happened?" Celeste squeezed his arm and laughed. "He works too much." "I fixed that." Everyone laughed with her. Liam did not. Something in him recoiled. Not at her, at what he had become in her world. Decorative, quiet, convenient. A man who had once been building something, now orbiting someone else's life. He excused himself and walked outside, breathing hard. The air was thick, the music faint. His reflection in the glass door did not look like him. His phone buzzed. A news headline. Cole Sphere named one of Forbes' most innovative financial platforms of the year. Beside the headline, a photo of Ariana. Strong, steady, unbroken. Not hardened, not cold. Reforged. She looked luminous. She looked powerful. She looked free. Liam felt something inside him collapse, quietly, like a structure built on the wrong foundation finally giving way. Not regret for leaving, regret for not rising. That night, Celeste curled against him, content, her breathing slow and unburdened. Her hand rested lightly on his chest, like decoration, not connection. Liam stared at the ceiling, unable to close his eyes. He had called what Ariana offered pressure, but now he understood. It had been invitation, an invitation to grow, to build, to evolve, to become someone capable of standing beside a woman who had forged herself from flame. He had not been suffocated. He had been seen. And he ran, not to freedom, to ease. And ease had turned to emptiness. Liam exhaled, long and heavy. The fantasy had not shattered in a single moment. It dissolved, like sugar in water. Sweet, beautiful, gone too fast to notice. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic day, not a holiday, not an anniversary. Just a Wednesday, when the sky was overcast and the city felt suspended between breaths. Ariana had just finished a morning strategy session, hair pulled into a sleek knot, voice steady, hands sure. She was different now. Still powerful, but no longer armored. She had learned to soften without disappearing. She was stepping out of the Cole Sphere elevator when the doors slid open, and there he was, Liam, standing in the lobby like he wasn't standing in the wreckage he created. He hadn't changed much. Same build, same quiet posture, same familiar eyes. But something about him had dulled. His shoulders curved slightly inward. His expression was uneven, like he hadn't slept well in weeks. Or months. He looked like a man who had lost something he hadn't realized he needed until it was gone. Ariana stopped, not because she was startled, but because this moment had always been inevitable. There are two kinds of heartbreak, the kind that ends something and the kind that circles back. This was the second. He stepped forward cautiously. Ariana. Her name and his voice used to sound like tenderness. Now it sounded like memory. She didn't speak, not out of anger, out of clarity. He swallowed hard. I've been wanting to talk to you. For a while. She waited. Silence makes truth reveal itself. He exhaled, voice cracking around the edges. I made a mistake. There it was, the confession, the rupture, the echo. But Ariana did not flinch. People think closure is a conversation. It isn't. Closure is the person you became in the absence. Liam's words tumbled out now, unchecked. I thought I needed peace. I thought I needed something simpler. I thought. He stopped, shaking his head. I thought I was drowning, but you weren't the water. You were the reason I learned to swim. Ariana's throat tightened, not with longing, but with grief for the woman she had been when she loved him. You left, she said quietly. Not accusation, just truth. He nodded, tears threatening. I know. And I shouldn't have. I didn't understand what I had. I didn't understand what you gave me. I was scared of being small next to you. I didn't know how to grow without feeling like I was failing. Ariana inhaled slowly. There it was. The truth she had known before he ever said it. He hadn't left her for Celeste. He had left himself. He met her gaze. I want another chance. I want to try again. I want to come home. The word home hung in the air like a plea. For a moment, the world was still. A memory flickered. Ariana asleep on his chest, his hand in her hair, the balcony, the jazz, the warmth. But the memory no longer hurt, which meant something had already ended. Liam, she said softly. His eyes lifted, hopeful, desperate, human. She stepped closer, so close he could smell jasmine from her perfume, warmth from her skin. Her voice was warm, steady, kind. Home isn't a person who leaves. The words landed gently, but they shattered him. Tears spilled, not dramatic, just real. Ariana, I loved you, she nodded. I know, but love is not the same as readiness. Her hand hovered near his cheek, then lowered before touching him. And I needed someone ready. His breath broke. But I am now. Ariana smiled. A soft, sad, breathtaking smile. No, you are regretful now. Regret and readiness are not the same thing. Regret wants the past. Readiness builds the future. He looked at her the way a man looks at a closed door he once believed would always be open. Desperate. Awake. Too late. Ariana stepped back. Not rejecting him. Releasing him. I wish you growth, she said quietly. I truly do. Not for me, for you. Liam's chest shook. He understood. Not just her words, but the future he had forfeited. He left the lobby slowly, like someone learning gravity for the first time. Ariana watched him go, not longing, not victorious. At peace, Dana appeared beside her, saying nothing. She had seen everything. Ariana exhaled. And in that breath, the past released her. Not because she forced it, but because she no longer needed to hold it. She turned toward the elevator, and the doors opened like a new beginning. Success did not return to Ariana in a single moment. It did not arrive wrapped in applause or recognition, like some neat cinematic redemption arc. It rose slowly, like dawn. Quiet at first, then undeniable. 3 months after Liam returned, only to leave again, by her choice, Ariana found herself standing backstage at the Global Women in Innovation Summit in New York City. Her name had been on the program for weeks. Ariana Cole, keynote speaker rebuilding economic access, one community at a time. But it wasn't the title that stirred the room. It was the story beneath it. A woman who had built something from nothing. A Black woman in tech. A leader who did not just create wealth. She redistributed opportunity, and the world had begun to notice. From the wings, she could see the audience, rows of founders, CEOs, activists, dreamers, young women holding notebooks, ready to write down every breath she spoke, reporters with cameras raised, investors waiting to assess, to measure, to judge. But Ariana didn't feel watched. She felt seen. There is a difference. Dana stood beside her, clipboard in one hand, headset crooked around her neck. You ready? She asked. Ariana nodded, not with bravado, but with certainty. Healing had not taken her ambition. It had refined it. The stage lights rose. Ariana walked forward. No stiffness, no facade, just presence. The silence when she reached the podium was not quiet. It vibrated. She took a breath, and then she spoke. When I started Coalsphere, I didn't start it to be impressive. I started it because I was tired of watching people be told they were too late, too behind, too under-resourced, too unsupported, too small. She paused. Her voice was warm now, steady, filling the air like heat. I know what it feels like to build your life from the ground, to claw your way into rooms that were never designed for you, to work twice as hard for half the recognition. and still wonder if you have earned the right to rest. She wasn't just speaking to entrepreneurs. She was speaking to every woman who had ever held her own world together with both hands. But here's the truth no one tells you. Strength is not something you prove. Strength is something you live. Every day you wake up and try again. That is strength. A younger woman in the front row wiped a tear quietly. Ariana continued, "And healing? Healing is not stepping away from the world. Healing is stepping back into it as more of yourself than you were before." The room was silent again, but this time the silence was worship. After the keynote, the press came. Microphones, recorders, flashbulbs bursting like fireworks. "Ariana, how did you overcome personal loss in the middle of building a billion-dollar platform? Ariana, do you consider yourself a symbol of modern resilience? Ariana, what would you say to women who feel like love is a liability to ambition?" Ariana smiled. "Not rehearsed, not performative. Love is not a liability," she answered. "Misaligned love is. Real love, true love, does not ask you to choose between your growth and your heart. It expands both." Cameras flashed. Pens scribbled. The quote would circulate across every business blog, every empowerment page, every college campus wall. That night, back at her hotel, Ariana stood at the window overlooking Manhattan. The city lights spread below her like constellations spilled across the earth. She placed a hand against her reflection in the glass. But unlike before, she did not see loss. She saw arrival. She had not just healed. She had expanded, grown wider, deeper, richer in spirit. Not in spite of the heartbreak, but because of it. She whispered into the glass. "No sadness, no longing, just truth. I never needed to be saved. I only needed to remember who I was." Outside, the world glowed. Inside, she did too. The world applauded her now. Headlines praised her. Panels requested her. Investors competed for her time. Coalsphere's valuations soared. Her keynote became the summit's most replayed clip. Social feeds were flooded with women quoting her words like scripture. She had become a symbol. But symbols are not allowed to rest. Symbols do not get to break. Symbols are not seen as human. Late nights returned, not out of desperation, but momentum. The engine of her life was running again, and she was driving it with precision. Ariana consulted with city legislators by day, met with developers at dusk, and problem-solved with her leadership team beneath the fluorescent glow of the boardroom well past midnight. Her voice shaped policy. Her influence redirected capital. Her ideas were building futures. She had spent years climbing uphill. Now the world was watching her stand on the summit, but no one saw the oxygen thinning. One evening, after 14 straight hours at the office, Ariana finally stepped into her apartment. She placed her keys on the marble table. The silence was immense. No footsteps, no shared laughter, no soft light from someone waiting up for her. Just stillness. She hung her blazer on the back of the dining chair and looked around. Everything was clean, perfect, controlled, a shrine to self-sufficiency. She sat on the couch and let her head fall back. Her bones felt heavy. Her heart felt heavier. People assume loneliness comes from lack, but sometimes it comes from abundance, from giving so much to the world that there is nothing left to give yourself. Ariana didn't cry, not because she was strong, because she was tired, and exhaustion has its own kind of silence. Her phone buzzed. Dana. Dana always seemed to know when the quiet was too loud. "Still at work?" Dana asked. "No, home. How are you, really?" Ariana hesitated. The question felt like a hand reaching into the part of her she never showed the world. She exhaled. "I feel expected. Everywhere. All the time. Like if I stop moving, something will collapse." There was a pause. Then Dana said softly, "Ari, you kept the world alive while you were breaking. You don't have to keep proving you deserve to breathe." Ariana closed her eyes. "I know. I just don't know how to stop." Dana didn't lecture. She simply said, "I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, the door opened. Dana walked in wearing sweats, carrying takeout, and 2 bottles of ginger tea. No makeup, no judgment, no fixing energy, just presence. She sat beside Ariana, thigh to thigh, shoulder to shoulder. They ate in silence. Not strained silence, shared silence. Then Dana said, "You need someone who sees the parts of you that aren't polished. Someone who loves the woman, not the myth, not romance, not applause, just safety." Ariana didn't speak. She didn't need to, because that was the truth she had avoided. She had become so extraordinary that she no longer knew how to be held in ordinary ways. She was loved by crowds but not by arms, admired by millions but not understood by one. Power had given her everything she once dreamed of, but power had also taken something from her. Not innocence, not softness, the ability to be small, the ability to lean instead of carry, the ability to need. And needing, for someone who has survived without it, is the most terrifying vulnerability of all. Dana placed her hand over Ariana's. You don't have to stay lonely to stay strong. Ariana swallowed hard. I don't know how to let someone in again. Dana squeezed her hand. That's okay, she whispered. You won't have to do it alone. They sat like that for a long time, the city glowing beyond the windows, the world pulling at Ariana's name. But not here. Here she was not a symbol, not a headline, not a triumph. Here, she was just a woman learning how to breathe again, and that was enough, for now. People assume that the hardest part of heartbreak is the breaking itself. It isn't. The hardest part comes later, when the world believes you're healed, when your work thrives, when your voice is steady again, and everyone thinks the storm has passed. The hardest part is choosing to open the door again, not to love someone, but to risk loving someone. Because love is not simply a feeling. Love is permission. To be seen, to be known, to be held where you are most defenseless. That is the part Ariana had not yet reclaimed. It happened on an evening that felt almost forgettable, the kind of night the universe chooses when it wants to be subtle. A community entrepreneurship panel, local founders, small stage lights, laughing audience, warm anthems of hope. Ariana wasn't speaking. She had come only to support one of Cole Sphere's grant recipients. She sat in the back row wearing soft denim and a cream sweater, almost anonymous. And that was when she saw him. Not with romance, not with spark, not with instant attachment, with recognition. Dr. Isaiah Ward. He had been on the panel, an economic psychologist who studied financial behavior in marginalized communities. Tall, warm dark skin, locks tied back at the nape, a voice like mahogany, deep, calm, inviting thought. He spoke about the emotional weight of survival, about how brilliance formed under pressure can become armor, about how self-protection can become isolation without us noticing. His words did not aim to impress. They aimed to reach, and Ariana felt reached. Not pierced, not exposed, just felt. After the panel, they found themselves beside the refreshment table, pouring tea from the same steaming kettle. Isaiah glanced at her, recognition flickering across his features. Not because she was famous, because he had seen her speak at the summit. Your keynote, he said quietly. It carried something rare. Ariana tilted her head. Most praise slid off her like rain on glass, but his tone held no admiration, only understanding. What did you hear? She asked. He met her gaze. A woman who learned to survive and is now learning to rest. No one had said it so plainly. Ariana felt her ribs tighten, not in pain, but in truth. She didn't respond immediately. He didn't rush her. Silence, suddenly, was gentle. They sat at a small table near the wall, paper cups warming their palms. He spoke of research and community. She spoke of infrastructure and access. He listened, truly listened. Not with awe, not with caution, with presence. And that was new. So new it felt foreign. So foreign it felt frightening. Later that night, Ariana stood in her apartment, the city glowing beneath her. Her phone lay face down on the counter. No messages from him. No assumption of access. No pursuit. Just space. Space to choose. Dana's words returned to her, soft and steady. You need someone who loves the parts of you that aren't polished. Ariana exhaled. She had been waiting for love to arrive. But love is not an arrival. Love is a decision to lower the drawbridge, to unlock the gate, to let light touch the room you once sealed off to survive. Ariana walked to the balcony, cool air brushing her skin. She didn't think about Liam. She didn't compare. She didn't fear. She simply felt something root inside her chest, a willingness not to fall, but to begin. 2 days later, she sent Isaiah a message. Not flirty, not strategic, simple. I enjoyed our conversation. Would you like to continue it over tea sometime? His reply came 5 minutes later. I would like that very much. No rush, no pressure, No narrative, just yes. Ariana placed her phone down, leaned back into the couch, and felt her heart open. Not wide, not unguarded, not recklessly, just enough. Enough to let the possibility of love return like sunrise. Slow, soft, inevitable. She had not chosen him. She had chosen herself. Healed enough to let someone meet her there. And that is how love begins again. Not with fireworks, with permission. There was no single moment where Ariana realized she was whole again. Healing rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly. In the mornings when you no longer wake up thinking of what was lost. In the evenings when silence feels peaceful rather than heavy. In the mirror, when your own reflection finally looks like someone you recognize. It took time, soft time, strong time. But one late spring morning, standing barefoot on her balcony, sun warming her skin, Ariana felt it. She had returned to herself. Not the self before love, not the self after heartbreak. A new self, formed from both. Isaiah became part of her days slowly, respectfully, like a tide that rose without force. They spent afternoons in bookstores, trading poetry lines that lingered in the bloodstream. They walked along the Beltline at dusk, speaking dreams rather than resumes. They held silence together, not as distance, but as trust. He never asked her to be smaller. He never feared her power. He did not pedestal her strength nor flinch at her vulnerability. He simply matched her pace, sometimes beside her, sometimes behind her, sometimes in front of her, but always with her. Love, she learned, is not lightning. It is soil. You grow in it. You rest in it. You choose it. The world continued to watch her, but she no longer needed the watching. Cole's sphere expanded to 5 cities, then 12. Communities once strangled by predatory lending models now thrived. Young entrepreneurs who had never been given a seat at the table now built their own tables out of brick, backbone, and shared belief. Ariana mentored them, not with superiority, but with memory. She remembered being them. She remembered the hunger, the fire, the fear, the miracle of one opportunity. She had become the door, and she kept it open. The recognition came, of course, a glossy magazine cover, her name on global innovation lists, invitations to speak on the kinds of stages she once sat in the audience of. But the moment that mattered most happened far from cameras or applause. A neighborhood garden she had helped fund held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Children ran through rows of basil and tomatoes, learning to grow something with their own hands. An elderly woman placed calloused fingers over Ariana's and whispered, "Thank you for coming back for us. Many leave. You didn't." Ariana's throat tightened. "That's because we rise together," she said. The woman smiled. "No, baby. You rose first, so we knew we could." Ariana closed her eyes. This was the legacy. Not headlines, not trophies, not valuation. Change held in someone else's hope. Weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Ariana sat at her vanity. Sunlight spilled across her face. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. No makeup, no stage, no armor. She looked at her reflection, not searching for who she used to be, not measuring what she had lost or gained, just seeing herself. The curve of her jaw, the softness beneath her eyes, the strength resting, not straining, in her posture. She lifted her hand, not to fix, not to judge, but to acknowledge. This was the woman she built, not from fire alone, but from tenderness, from collapse, from rising, from choosing love again, from choosing herself again. Ariana Cole did not need to be crowned by the world. She had crowned herself, not with glory, but with becoming. And now, this is where your story enters, because somewhere inside you, there is also a woman who survived what should have broken her. A woman who learned to walk through doors she once believed were locked. A woman who has forgotten, perhaps, that she was not built to be small. So if this story reached you, if it sat in your chest, if it reminded you of something you thought you lost, then stay here. There are more stories to come, more women rising, more hearts rediscovering themselves. Like, comment, follow this channel, not for numbers, but to build a space where women remember their fire together. Your story is not finished. Your rebuilding has already begun. You are the crown. You are the throne. You are the woman who rises next.